I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Ibrahim Ati, and I am honored to serve as the moderator for this panel discussion. Today's webinar is organized by Arbitration Academia in collaboration with ArabArb. These esteemed organizations represent the next generation of dispute resolution professionals with a focus on the Arabic world. We are delighted to have their founders joining us today. The main theme of our recorded webinar is Arabs in arbitration. Over the course of the next hour, we will explore various aspects of this topic. Around 40 to 50 minutes will be dedicated to specific questions to our speakers, while the remaining 10 to 15 minutes will be reserved for audience questions. Thank you. The Middle East and North Africa region, spanning continents, is experiencing significant growth and development, including a rise in dispute resolution activities. Today, we will delve into an important aspect, which is representation. With Arabic being one of the most widely spoken languages globally, and with our rich legal traditions, it's crucial to assess our representation in Western and Middle Eastern law firms. Are we provided with equal opportunities compared to other candidates? Are there any misconceptions or challenges we face? Our speakers will shed light on the extent of room for improvement and share their strategies to facilitate the entry of more Arabic practitioners into the field, whether they come from Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Lebanon, Saudi, or beyond. Thank you for joining us on this important journey, inshallah. Before introducing each of our esteemed panelists, a few words about me. My name is Ibrahim. After having completed a dual legal education in Europe and the US, I am currently working at Parker Shaffie LLP, a specialized litigation boutique in Los Angeles, and will be taking the New York bar this July. I am glad to serve for the incoming terms in both the arbitration and the professional discipline committee of the New York Bar Association. I am a lecturer in Arbitration Academia and a member of ArabArb as well. I am happy to introduce you to Lilian Khoury, co-founder of ArabArb. Lilian practices internationally at Steptoe and Johnosn in New York, where she has already built experience in commercial and investment disputes involving the Middle East and Africa. She is an important member of multiple arbitration-related associations. Thank you for coming, Lilian. I am happy to introduce you to our second panelist, Noor Nicolas. Noor is a co-founder of ArabArb and is currently based in New York, where she works at Foley Hoag. She has completed legal education in Lebanon, Paris, and the US, with an LLM in Harvard. During her time there, she volunteered at the Harvard Arab Alumni Association. Noor has been actively involved with the Vismut as both a coach and arbitrator. Thank you, Noor. Our third panelist, Cherine Ftouki, is a global arbitration specialist working in London, in the UK, at Mayer Brown. She has a strong legal experience in London, having formerly worked for multiple other international firms in their arbitration practices there as well. Cherine has achieved legal education in both France and the UK at the King's College, with a highly specialized focus in arbitration. Cherine has written extensively in the field and has a strong presence in the Vismut as well. We are very happy to have you today. Our fourth panelist, Nawal Hend, is an arbitration specialist based in Dubai, in which she currently practices at Freshfields. Nawal is the founder of Arbitration Academia, the organizing association of this webinar series. After her legal education in Palestine, Nawal achieved an LLM in the US, focusing on international arbitration. She is admitted in both the Jerusalem and New York bar. She is very active in enhancing Arab practitioners in the dispute resolution field, al-tahkim. Thank you for organizing this with ArabArb. I will start by asking Lilian on her career's development as an Arab American. Lilian, as an Arab who grew up in Syria, how has your ethnicity influenced the development of your career in arbitration? Could you share both the advantages and challenges you have met?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having us all. It is a pleasure to co-sponsor this event. I will venture a guess that all of us on this call are from all over the world. I think from among the panelists, we already are. I'm sure the attendees are as well. And it's a testament to how many Arabs are practicing in arbitration globally. So to answer your question, there are a couple of things I think I would raise in terms of my background and how it affected my career. And it's something that I think I've heard reflected in a lot of colleagues' experiences and a lot of the shared experiences of practitioners of arbitration around the world and institutions, among counsel, et cetera. And I think I'll focus on certain points in particular. One is the interest that it spurs in arbitration in the first place. I think a lot of us, from the introductions you just mentioned, Rahim, a lot of us have had experiences, careers, backgrounds that have spanned multiple jurisdictions, that have straddled many countries. And a lot of us have this interest. Sometimes it becomes a passion, sometimes it becomes a lifelong career to keep an international aspect to our careers. And if there's one thing that arbitration is good at, it's keeping us on our toes. We always have to make sure that we can find out the laws of a jurisdiction very quickly. We have to be nuanced and savvy in how we address disputes. There's a lot of times local counsel in multiple jurisdictions where soft norms are different, and you have to be able to address that. And I think within the arbitration communities, everybody's previous background plays a little bit of a role in encouraging them to follow this path, to choose this legal specialization in particular. In terms of the career itself, there are a number of things I think that have happened as a result of an Arab background. One is you become the point person for any disputes that have anything to do with the Arab world or the Middle East, purely from a knowledge and language perspective. A lot of us here speak, at the very least, English and Arabic. A lot of us speak French in addition. Many of us speak different languages, different regional dialects, different local languages. And that always comes into play with arbitrations that have to do with the Arab world. It is very different when you communicate with a client, with local counsel, with a local expert in language, when you're able to understand cultural nuances, when you're able to appreciate differences between, say, common law, civil law, the particularities of a particular jurisdiction, and that always helps. So generally, if you're legal counsel at a firm, you're going to be someone who is particularly well suited to handle disputes that have to do with the Arab world. Another thing I think I would raise in particular is the knowledge of history. The Arab world has gone through a number of changes, some very positive, some very painful. A very specific historical narrative that has informed a lot of the disputes that are going on right now in the Middle East. Everybody has always known there's a lot of construction that happens in the Gulf, but there's now also a lot of investor-state disputes that have arisen from the conflicts, the revolutions, the civil wars that have taken over the entire Middle East. And a knowledge and an understanding of the historical aspects of particular jurisdictions is always helpful in the relevant field. And the third point that I would raise very briefly is the network. I recognize a lot of familiar faces from among the attendees today. The Arab network is smaller than a lot of us, I think, would hope. There are a lot of Arab practitioners, but there aren't as many as there could be. The Arab world is enormous. And it's very important to have those connections, those networks. When you know practitioners, when you know legal experts, when you know counsel, it's always helpful in the dispute.
Okay. Thank you for your input, Lilian. It helps us having in mind the steps in entering the field. Thank you. Noor, as someone who has close links with the Middle East region, we would like to hear your insights on how do the practices of international firms in the Arabic regions affect Arab dispute resolution lawyers located there.
Thank you. And I also wanted to thank Arbitration Academia and Nawal and Ibrahim for organizing this panel. It's such a pleasure to participate on it. So to answer your question, of course, we've noticed over the past few years, international law firms establish themselves and expand their presence in the Middle East region. Of course, there's a reason why that happens, right? It's not just for business development, but it's also because many disputes, and as Lilian was saying earlier, many disputes already exist and pertain to big players in the region. The applicable law is also, is therefore a home jurisdiction in the Middle East region. And so there's a lot of opportunities for Arab dispute resolution attorneys to participate in this arbitration field, right? And I would say that, so the opportunities, I would say, are twofold. There's, on the one hand, exposure, but there's also an opportunity to learn the substance and the practice. And just to take two immediate opportunities, I would say, when a law firm establishes itself in the Middle East, first you have brilliant students and junior practitioners who would like the opportunity to work directly within that, within that law firm with a foreign team. And so those are the same students that could have had the opportunity to travel abroad, but they decide instead to stay in their home jurisdiction. And Ibrahim and Nawal are our primary example of that. And other practitioners who already have their independent practice, they wish to stay there. They don't want to sit and integrate within another international law firm, but they could have the opportunity to act as co-counsel to them. So these are two immediate opportunities for different types of practitioners and students. And a big advantage to that is obtaining exposure, because as soon as you work with international law firms, you build your profile, and that's either by meeting different arbitrators, attending a hearing, working with opposing counsel. So all of that is really really helpful. And more on the substance, it's an opportunity to learn more about what international arbitration is, because my dad is an attorney. I've seen what he worked on in Lebanon, and we're usually confined to domestic litigation space. So it's always helpful for us to learn how international law operates and what an international dispute is, how to strategize. And knowing all of this and trying to seize upon these opportunities, I think in the long run provides even more advantages. And that one, for example, is that you can eventually, as an Arab dispute resolution attorney, you can eventually build your own practice. Start with small international law cases, and then build it from there on. You can also become the main point of contact with clients in the region, state-owned entities, governments, other private big corporations. Third, you can end up maybe merging with a big law firm, with an international law firm, and then serving as the local head and leader of the firm. So really, there are really different opportunities to for progressing, building profile, improving, and even for those who are not, let's say, because we know that the market is really tight and we know there's so much competition. So even for those who are not able to immediately seize on the opportunity to work with an international law firm, we now have events like Arbitration Week in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and we have arbitration days in Lebanon. So all of that provides opportunity for those who are not directly yet in the field to kind of get a glimpse of what it is and try to work their way around it and maybe ultimately join it. So it's really a series of opportunities that establishing an international law firm in the Middle East region provides to those based there.
I see. Thank you so much for both your words and for this insight, Noor. Cherine, as more and more Arabic practitioners achieve career milestones in the legal field, jointly with very important national developments in the economy and trade, could you please tell us more on diversity policies towards us? As an Arab practitioner with both Lebanese and Algerian roots, working as global arbitration specialist at Mayer Brown, have you witnessed the adoption, if any, of racial diversity policies by international firms to contribute in increased involvement of Arabs in such firms? Also, are there reforms you have in mind to suggest to improve these policies?
Hi, Ibrahim. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. First of all, it's a great honor to be here today. I would like to extend my gratitude to both Arbitration Academia and ArabArb for inviting me discussing this topic. And to address the first part of your question, Ibrahim, I think the diversity pledges and policies implemented by international firms have been instrumental in creating opportunities for people with a diverse background to play a more prominent role within firms. So the policies recognize the value of diverse perspective and aim at addressing what has been historically, underrepresentation. So the first step will be, I think, actively seeking to hire and promote individuals from diverse backgrounds, including Arabs. And then firms can tap into a broader range of experience, cultural insight, language skill, as Lilian mentioned, that are highly relevant to arbitration practice. But I think that the real underlying issue is more, how do we raise awareness, particularly regarding unconscious bias, rather than direct racial discrimination, which within the legal environment especially will rarely materialize as such. Unconscious bias manifests itself in various ways, and I think it starts with answering one question: what does it mean to be Arab? What constitutes Arab culture and background? What is an Arab? So is it being just, born in the Middle East, or being from an Arab country but raised from a young age abroad, or just holding a passport from any MENA country? While some Arabs are often associated with being Muslim, it is essential to recognize that there are various confessions within the Arab community, such as in Lebanon, Egypt. There is also a complex dynamic regarding the identification of certain regions. For example, it's not in every people's mindset in Europe that an Algerian is also an African. And similarly, some individuals in certain regions, let's take Lebanon, for example, may identify themselves more as Phoenicians than Arabs. So I think diversity extends beyond the surface level of ethnic and cultural background. It encompasses how we embrace and honor our heritage and cultural roots. So it's important to foster this inclusive environment, acknowledge these nuances, and then we can, work toward a better enhancing diversity and inclusion for Arab practitioners. It's also about how we appropriate the Arabic heritage. So in practice, how do we materialize that? First, what can law firm do? I think, talking about unconscious bias, we could organize, and we do at Mayabron, training for staff regarding this. So it helps raising awareness and especially decision-making processes, and it enables employers to make a more objective judgment. For example, when you appoint someone for an arbitration disputes, or I think more generally, it's important that, the firm create a fair and inclusive environment for Arabs and any other underrepresented groups in the industry. One step that might be taken is, for example, I don't know if you heard about the Arab pledge, equal representation in arbitration. And taking the pledge, similar to what Mayabron has done, is a step forward. Still talking about the arbitration practice, I think one solution might be potentially anonymizing shortlist of arbitrators candidates. It's a valuable step. It removes, the bias arising from names or ethnic backgrounds, and then you can select in a more neutral way your arbitrator. Firms can also use their influence, especially global firms, to boost the profile of local practitioners in different jurisdictions. So this can be achieved by actively seeking opportunities to invite them to speaking engagement, introducing co-counseling opportunities, providing platforms for their voice to be heard, and showcasing the expertise and contribution of our practitioners. And this can help, break down the barriers and increase the visibility of our practitioners. At Mayabron, for example, recently we hosted the London International Dispute Week. And we opened with a keynote speech with Professor Lucas, and the MENA panel opened the week. So we foster, discussion around the attractivity of Middle East as a seat for arbitration, current development in the region, and we had insight from prominent speakers. We had Kristen Alberti from the Saudi Commercial Arbitration Center, Dr. Azimul, Bahrain Ministry of Justice, just to name a few. So it was well attended by both the arbitration Arab community, and in particular, of course, but also from people with a very diverse background working and looking to work more with the Middle East. So I think that's an important step. Then you have other possibilities like mentorship program. It's important, to support the career development of Arab practitioners. And one solution might be pairing junior Arab professionals with experienced mentors to offer guidance, support, networking opportunities, and help overcome obstacles and facilitate upward mobility overall. So this work, as a first step, because you work with more senior people, but it also needs to be an inclusive process within the firm. And I think it's also start with client pitches approach. As most of you may know, we now really recognize the importance of diversity and inclusion in pitches. And well, even clients, they're asking, they're more often seeking for more diverse legal representation. And the important thing to bear in mind is that it's not merely about token representation, if I could say that. It's about recognizing the valuable expertise, knowledge, abilities that diverse professionals bring to the table. So it's a bit of a tricky exercise. And one thing that could help, in, achieving both is probably when you engage in recruitment effort to ensure that you provide equal opportunities, but maybe reaching out to Arab legal association, like ArabArb, Arbitration Academia, universities, professional network to promote job openings and internship. So you can just broaden your talent pool and actively be seeking Arab candidates. Firms can just then overcome systemic barriers and that may limit Arab representation. And well, you said racist practice, it does exist. It's not something that does not exist. And I think it's important for firms to establish clear anti-discrimination policies and procedures within the firm. And any employees should feel, empowered to report any instance of discrimination. And it also works with the firm leadership. They should actively be able to seek support to be able to enforce these policies. At Mayer Brown, for example, we offer a safe space to discuss these issues with internal committees and part of the steering Mayer Brown Fusion Committee, which aims at helping the firm to engender a nurturing and actively supportive environment, providing support for ethnic minority group if needed. And it provides, this program, it fosters a sense of belonging and support within the firm. Another thing is promoting diversity in leadership position. This is key, I think, because you actively, identify, develop talented Arab professionals for leadership roles, and it demonstrates first the firm's commitment to, inspire future generation to inclusion and having representation at senior level. It has a positive cascading effect, encouraging more Arabs and people from more generally mixed background to pursue career in arbitration. Mayer Brown, again, we have a very diverse team here in London. I think I discussed that with Nawal previously, with leading lawyers from Brazil, Korea, Syria, Iraq, Pakistan, Singapore, and so much more. And it just showcased how the firm is committed to this. It's very inspiring. And well, how, what a better example than having Raïd Abu Maneh, Palestinian, being partner, co-head of the arbitration group in London and practice, or Danny Khayat in Paris, head of the arbitration practice there, and also leader of the Middle East disputes practice. So it's important, to create such structure within the firm in terms of, inspiring more junior people. And last but not least, very quickly, I think to answer this question, it's important to say that it's not only about how firms are addressing the issues, it's also about clients, institutions, and aspiring arbitrators. What can they do? So very briefly, clients, we all know they are actively in the arbitration process, engaged. They need some time to shortlist arbitration selection, and they have a role. So we have a role also within the Arab community when we shortlist candidates. For example, we discussed again with Nawal, you have a Saudi client. You need to appoint a counsel. You will be appointing an English counsel, and sometimes can be done more locally. So clients are important, institution as well. They need to remain open to the fact that they could, open the door to new and promising candidates, actively seek potential arbitrators to expand their pool of available talents, and considering more junior practitioners, I think, because the practice need, this fresh view. And finally, and I think this is probably for me what is also important when I say we need, ourselves to also play a role in that. Aspiring arbitrators or people in the practice, well, Of course, you need to consider applying for initiative offered by institutions such as the ICC Africa program. It's a valuable exposure, and you can submit your CV to arbitral institutions for being included in the special list to have more visibility or raise your profile. But I think one thing that is important is to understand better how you can be an asset as an Arab practitioner. And of course, we all know the impact of studies and education in an arbitration career. It's very important, for credibility, knowledge, skills. But when handling arbitration cases involving Middle Eastern practices, and Lilian touched base briefly on the topic, you should consider the predominance of few elements. And I'll take one example. The civil legal tradition in the region, Qatar, Egypt. If we take, for example, the influence of Khoury, who was interested at the time by compiling Islamic law, such as Majalla Hanafiya at the time of the Ottoman Empire, and just utilizing this principle and in the format of the civil codes of the European countries. And he had no difficulties to do that intellectually, and he developed a better and more blending type of code. So being able to just understand that connection, for example, and that legal system are influenced by traditional concepts developed from both Sharia law, civil law, is an asset for us. And on the other side, certain concepts ingrained in the common law tradition, such as the practice of party-appointed witnesses or cross-examination, may be misunderstood. So being able to grasp that is also an asset. So wherever you're from, whichever the background, being an Arab with common civil Sharia law background, it's always an asset. It's just about how you use it and you understand how it plays in practice. That's my opinion. And two small further examples is that, cultural consideration, it's important in advocacy as well. So as Lilian mentioned, I think it helps bridging the gap, build rapport, enhance, skills in cross-cultural arbitration proceeding. And now more than ever, with the Arab world experiencing significant developments in arbitration, including in Saudi Arabia, for example, key legislative advancements since 2012, the new vision for 2030, full reversal toward arbitration-friendly environment. Bahrain as well has ambitions to establish itself as a leading seat in the region. So these huge developments creates opportunities for us to participate in domestic and international arbitration cases and contribute to the growth and evolution in the field of the field in the region.
Well, thank you so much, Cherine. It was quite interesting, especially the opportunities that you mentioned. It was quite surprising for me. Thank you so much. I didn't know about many of those. By the way, London is quite a huge place for both arbitration and Arabic culture. So I'm sure you're enjoying your time there, of course.
It is indeed. You need to all come to London. That's the hub.
Sure. Nawal, can you please tell us more on Arbitration Academia? As the founder, how do you envision the platform playing a role in addressing representation issues of Arabs and providing support to Arab lawyers in arbitration?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Ibrahim, for this question, which I think is essential now, and it's a question that all institutions and companies are asking themselves. I think mainly because of the new ESG compliance issue that we're all facing, and I bet all lawyers are currently dealing with them at their firms. So allow me first to give a brief introduction on what is Arbitration Academia, where is it established, who is on board, what is our focus when it comes to services, and also when it comes to audience, because I think through this way we will be able to provide a more elaborative answer to our speakers and answer the bigger question: why is Arbitration Academia interested in the diversity question and more specifically in the Arab representation conversation? So Arbitration Academia is a private company that was initially established in the Middle East, as a matter of fact. So that's our starter point. So the physical office is again in the MENA. Our board, for example, constitutes of 7 members. 4 of us are Arab arbitration or dispute resolution lawyers, and 2 are non-Arabs but practice in the MENA region. So again, that kind of already gave the pinpointer of why we're having this conversation today. Now, when it comes to what Arbitration Academia is currently doing regarding implementation of programs and policies towards enhancing the Arab representation policy forward, I would like to answer this question through explaining the three main services, or what I call them three main levels and layers of Arbitration Academia that we process around. The first level, or the first service, is the educational. So this is where we do our conferences, those webinars that we're doing, the workshop we were hosting, for example, last month in Jordan. And much more, and also our arbitration courses. So when it comes to this level, to this service, what we have been doing so far is 2 or 3 things technically. The first thing is hosting courses, again, workshops, conferences with a spotlight on the profession in the MENA. So let alone this diversity inclusion, I think, again, another way of including and calling out those Arabs, or even, non-Arabs, but practicing in the MENA, is by, again, hosting conversations and webinars and conferences with a light on what is going on. So giving an example, 1 month ago or 3 weeks ago, we've hosted a webinar on construction arbitration in the Middle East, which is, as most arbitration practitioners know, it's a big thing here for us. So, and that, by the way, that was one of our most active webinars we've ever had, which tells you a lot. Another thing we have been doing is also being aware of who are we inviting to sit on our panel, right? So international, of course, merits is number one that we're looking at, and qualifications, but we're also keeping in mind that at least one of our speakers, regardless, by the way, of the number of the panel, at least one of them need to be an Arab or coming from an Arab background. That is also another way to provide a platform for those practitioners when we're talking about international arbitration. Sometimes it's really that simple. Another way, which is even more simple than that, but it really goes in, even, I would dare say, a little step deeper when we're talking about racialization in this profession, is offering workshops, conferences, courses in Arabic. Sometimes language is the barrier, right? So there's a lot of, again, very well qualified, very well skilled lawyers, arbitrators, mediators, lecturers that are again coming from this region, but they simply just don't speak the language. And so we're also inviting those people, which they are a party of this profession, right? But we're just kind of looking the other way. And also by doing this, what we're doing is not just for the speakers themselves, but the audience. We're also targeting those, thriving and let's say junior lawyers and arbitrators and mediators, and even senior, I would dare say, who are doing well and wish to evolve their career, but they just don't speak the language. They can't take a CIAR, for example, course because they just can't get it, or they can't get an ICC court or a DIAC court because it's even in the DIAC, it's in English, right? So we're also giving a platform to those people. The second level, or the second service, is legal consultancy. So the way this worked for us is we have listings of firms, offices, advisors, again, from all over the world, right? But the way we've, again, pushed this diversity and Arab representation policy is by making sure there's enough space for Arab lawyers, Arab consultants, and even Arab law firms and offices. And I was talking the other day with Cherine, and I think Cherine kind of slightly mentioned that, or quickly. We had a case 1 month ago, a Malaysian firm approached us regarding a cross-border commercial dispute, and they wanted to appoint a Saudi legal advisor. And so instead of referring this case to a big international firm with those foreign lawyers, right, which they're already dominant in this market, we're giving the space to this, Saudi barred Arabic-speaking lawyer. And this is exactly what we did, which again have enough merits and requirements. This is also another racialization of non-speaking English lawyers, that we think that this diversity conversation is about letting the other, who's maybe less qualified, taking a place or offering them a piece of the cake. It's not. You're really not doing them in any favor. They are equally qualified, they're equally skilled, but we just need to broaden the dynamic of the profession and the field. Lastly and not least, which is the last service or the last level of arbitration academia, is where we provide our dispute resolution services. So again, this is where we have tailored the ODR and also face-to-face arbitration rules. And also this is where we assist clients sometimes merely on appointment of an arbitrator or mediator. So same thing, we're offering and giving a space for arbitrators and mediators who are coming from this region. Which, by the way, they're actually the majority of our listers so far, and happily doing so. Now, when it comes to the fourth level of arbitration academia, which is our administrative tasks, we're also determined in, as Cherine said, we're currently actually hiring and interviewing for our legal internships, so which we've just opened 1 month ago. And we're also making sure that the majority, let's say, of those internees are Arab. And I say majority because that's the nature of just where we are. We have a focus really on the region. So we're making sure that, again, we're providing a space to those people coming from this background. Same thing when it comes to our HR management as well, and all other type, even IT people. We're also making sure that there's diversity going on there. Finally, and not least, also when it comes to the external relationships of arbitration academia, right? So who are we partnering up with? Are we only partnering up with non-Arab institutions, or are we giving space to those other chambers and platforms that exist in the region? So giving an example, we've signed a couple of memorandum of understandings last month with a lot of Arab universities, including the American Arab University, for example. We've also signed an MOU with the RCC Chamber, even the Banking Institute of Palestine. We're currently building an arbitration department for them there, right? So again, this is a kind of a very important way. And also not just with our MOUs, sometimes just partnering up with other institutions, like an activity, like per activities, like we're doing today with ArabArb, right? So an institution that has a focus on diversity and specifically Arab inclusion. I think this is very doable for any institution, as long as you have, and again, this is another kind of an ESG factor and element that we've been trying to push, is that it really starts from up there, the board, right? The directors. So if you have a director who's really into and has a focus on diversity, it can be doable, and while balancing and maintaining, your profits, your revenues, and your business strategy, which really doesn't contest with one another. It actually collides. So that's that, and we hope that in the future we continue to partner up with more institutions working in the region, and also continue to adopt more Arab legal advisors and arbitrators and mediators in our listings.
Thank you for this and the support, Nawal. It does help, and we hope the region practitioners, or those having Arabic background, or even those willing to get closer to the Arabic world, will benefit eventually. Inshallah. Lilian, to get back more on our organization world, can you please tell us more on what are the events, strategies, and policies implemented by ArabArb to promote the representation of Arabs in the field of international arbitration?
Absolutely. So I think the best way to explain it is to really give a background as to how and why ArabArb was founded. Initially, it started off as a very informal dinner series. A number of practitioners based out of New York realized we have a lot in common in terms of our work, our clients, our backgrounds, and it started as a very informal series of drinks and dinners and very casual events for practitioners to get together and collaborate. And very soon we recognized that there was really a need, initially in the US market, for a platform for those practitioners to get together and discuss both professional and career advancement issues. And so we launched last year. There are 5 women on the executive board. We launched the association together. Noor and I are on the board. Also on the board are Randadra, Cherine and Khoury. And we have an advisory board who are also preeminent arbitration practitioners. Unintentionally, it is an all-women executive and advisory board. I say unintentionally, but it really is the preeminent arbitration practitioners from an Arab background who happen to be all women. So our advisory board needs no introduction. It's Mariam Rashid from Eversheds, Maria Jdid, Amal Boushnaki, Yasmin Lahlou, and Karine Mawad. Absolutely no introduction needed. And we're very grateful for their support and their generosity in helping to promote and organize this platform. And as I said, like initially, this was supposed to be a US-based activity just to promote and unite those practitioners with either roots in or an affinity to the Arab world. But when we launched our event, we got, and I think Noor can attest to this, we got an overwhelming response from all over the world for people who reached out to say, this is needed in the community. What can we do to help promote it? What can we do to help organize it? How can we expand this globally? And so what was initially going to be perhaps a 2 or 3 year global expansion plan got very fast forwarded very quickly. And I think it's no secret, a lot of us here know this, that very soon we will be launching international hubs. And in the interim, we're trying to organize at a slow pace, controlled pace, events globally to actually provide opportunities and capitalize on what a lot of micro panels have been raising, a lot of opportunities and a lot of possibilities for involvement for practitioners, experts, academics, arbitrators in arbitration. So it's an inclusive association. It's very open. We have membership that is always open. But I think at this point, we're going to start calling it registration. There's nothing, there are no hard barriers. We're really, our point is to welcome everybody. So I'll direct everybody to the ArabArb website if you'd like to register and be part of the group. In terms of your question, sort of, what are the specific tools and policies that we're using? It's really geared towards the membership. And because the membership is so diverse, it's not only legal counsel, it's a different subset of legal counsel. There's big law firms, US-based, Europe-based, in the Western world. There's local counsel in the Middle East, in the Arab world, all over. We have from big law to solo practitioners. We have academics, a lot of professors of universities, a lot of people who are interested in the jurisprudence, in the legal history, in the analytics of the legal, of the arbitration world. We have experts, damages experts, local law experts, we have students, we have institutional actors, a lot of people from the regional centers in the Middle East expressed either an interest or are members of the organization. So what we're doing is we're really trying to focus on the needs and the opportunities for those actors. So for practitioners, let me give it a very, very easy example that I think all of us have dealt with. You'll have needs in a case. Nawal mentioned this. You'll have a client who doesn't speak English. You'll have a very important witness who doesn't speak English. You might have an issue that arises where you need an expert on a particular issue under Algerian law. You might have damages, a case where you have damages and you're trying to quantify something, and it happens to be a case that involves those post-conflict issues, right? You might have an arbitration clause. All of a sudden, a client tells you, I'm thinking about filing a case. Here's my arbitration clause. And the arbitration clause provides for OIC arbitration, or it provides for arbitration that is in front of a particular institution, the Cairo Center. What do I do here? And you need to be able to give a quick and sophisticated and tailored answer. So what we're trying to do is to offer a platform for arbitration practitioners, and I say this in the broad sense of the word, to connect, to network, to collaborate with each other, to identify those opportunities and try to work on achieving the best cases for the firms, for the practitioners, for the clients. We're also trying to increase the visibility of our members. So a lot of these people, as Nawal mentioned, as Cherine and Noor mentioned, a lot of these people are very, very qualified, but perhaps it's a little bit difficult to break into the field or to make sure that you have visibility, that you are known in the community, that when someone is going to think about appointing an arbitrator, they're going to think of you. So we're also trying to just promote the visibility of our members. We're trying to advance the substantive knowledge of arbitration. There's a lot of particular issues, we've also spoken about this before, that are very common in the disputes that involve the Arab world. And so part of it is to try and figure out, how do you put together a body of knowledge that is easily accessible, having one place where you're able to go and get a quick answer to the questions that you need. There are a lot of fantastic resources, a lot of books written on arbitration in the Middle East, arbitration in the Arab world, construction issues, investment issues. There's a fantastic body of knowledge. The point is to build on that and make sure that it's accessible and available to everybody. We have a lot of junior practitioners, junior associates, law students. We are launching, Cherine, I know you mentioned this, to start a mentorship program. We are starting a mentorship program where we're trying to pair up law students, junior associates, young practitioners, people who aren't even in law school yet, to pair them up with mid-level senior associates, partners, institutional actors, and just share that knowledge. I know from myself, at this point, I'm a senior associate at Steptoe. It's been a few years that there's room to sort of pass on a little bit more knowledge than I tend to ask for. And a lot of us have a very deliberate strategy of trying to make sure that we open room for people to come into the profession, that we explain sort of the intricacies, where there are opportunities. I cannot count the number of times that I've had conversations with people that are present here about, hey, we're looking for an Arabic speaker. Who can you recommend? And it really is through those very informal channels that a lot of the career advancement happens. So we will be sort of organizing webinars that are more substantive. You start to understand who are the people who come, who are the people who show up, who are those who are interested, where is the room for growth? And we're trying to make sure that, at least through ArabArb, we have a platform for everybody to come together and take advantage of things.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much for your explanations, Lilian. I hope also that ArabArb's role is clearer for the participants now than it used to be, and that you will be able to participate further and together. Noor, as one of the co-founders of ArabArb and having worked in competitive arbitration centers in the world, based on the data collected by ArabArb from Arab lawyers working in the international sphere, what areas require our attention in terms of enhancing Arab representations in our field? Additionally, what mechanisms do you propose to bring about these reforms?
I think that's a great question, and it's something that Lilian and I and our board members with an ArabArb are going to continue to reflect on, because it's a continuous problem, I'll say, the underrepresentation. But I mean, for the past hour, we've heard really interesting ways to address this. But what I will say is, and this is really speaking from my personal experience, but also from our, exchanges working, with other students and attorneys, is that I think the main issue with the root of the underrepresentation has more to do with stigma and perception than actual merit. And I think I think people would agree to that, because I went to USG in Lebanon. I did my Bachelor of Law there. And to be honest, yes, I went to Paris, I did SAS, I also went to Harvard, but to be really honest, I owe a lot more to my Bachelor of Law in Lebanon from USG than I do to the other universities. Like, this is my foundation in law. And I know a lot of people, most of my friends from the Arab world echo the same sentiment. And all this to say is that we have strong educational systems in the Arab world that we should all be very, very proud of. And just because we didn't graduate with a JD from the US or, a bachelor from the UK doesn't mean that we're not intelligent, or that we're not knowledgeable, or that we don't have the capacity to, to learn about other subjects that we weren't, prone to before. And yes, for example, it means that we're not as apt in US corporate law than we are in, Lebanese civil procedure or something. But that's the beauty for international arbitration, is that you're constantly exposed to foreign, subject matters, foreign procedural and substantive laws. And the fact that we didn't graduate from a Western system does not mean that we're not up to speed, and we're not able or don't have the capacity to be on the same, to be as competent as other people are. And so with this introduction is I really wanted to say that really the issue is more about just breaking the stigma and breaking the bias against us. Like the number of times I've received the question, oh, like you speak English well, like you're able to draft something that makes sense, Of course, I'm not a native English speaker, but it's always questions like this that I come across, and it's just finding ways to break all of this. And there are a few solutions, most of them echoing what has already been said, especially by Lilian and Cherine, but some of them are different. I would say first is lobbying universities, not necessarily to improve their international law program, but to make it more extreme in a way, mainstream in a way. Because when I was doing my bachelor, I remember always hearing international law does not exist. And, there's some debate around that. We come from war-torn countries where, law has not always been on our side. But hearing this always kind of was, like being confronted to this always was a challenge. So just bringing it more to the fore, I think would be helpful. Second is also lobbying universities to start collaborating more with international universities. And this is something that USG, I know, has started doing by collaborating with Lyon, trying to have an exchange program. Again, not to say that they have a better educational system than us, but it's always good to just start getting out there, and like as soon as you can, just start getting some exposure to some other jurisdiction. And it's always helpful when you're applying to law firm for them to see that, okay, you're, that France exists on the map or something like that. And third thing is I would encourage, students and also universities to participate in international competitions like the JESAB, the VSMUT. All of this is incredibly helpful. It was helpful in my experience, and every time I see someone applying to my firm with having participated in the VSMUT, it's first of all, it's familiar to me, but it also means that person was, a hardworking person and wanted to go, above, their means to try to, learn about international law. And that's always something encouraging to see on a resume. It's also helpful to try to do internships, and this is where it's a two-way street. So international, let's say I would have wanted to apply to the ICC in Paris, right? But because I was never encouraged to do so, and I know that the ICC usually, doesn't necessarily prefer Arab students who have no international background, I just knew that there was going to be a challenge and it's going to be an impossible path to me. So it's two-way street. We have to encourage and incentivize international institutions to take on more Arab students and Arab practitioners. And and it goes also for international law firms in Paris and London in the US. It goes to what Cherine was saying, encouraging this DEI initiative of always being receptive to receiving backgrounds, not having this wall of no, I prefer to hire someone I already know their background, I already know what university they went to. If it's a risk, do some additional exams. You can do an English exam. You can just try to find a way just to break the stigma and give some chance to people who don't fall within the mainstream of students and attorneys that apply. And I think this is mostly what I would recommend. But of course, there's just so much to be done. But this is kind of a good starting point, I think.
Thank you very much, Noor. We are very glad to have your recommendations for improving our presence and building the bridge. I personally think it has a lot to do with the firm's leaderships that are forced to have a greater interest in the region due to clients. The bar admission is also a big issue, as many look for dual qualified professionals. I hope that the Gulf's rise will spot more light on the incredible legal expertise you already have, which is, in my opinion, not regarded enough. I also would like to suggest to young practitioners to participate in VSMUT at the best of the capabilities, whether as a student, a coach for a university team, or fictional arbitration for the pre-moot. It's an excellent experience in the field, and with your own legal education can have similar credentials than other candidates. Cherine, as someone having practiced in France and the UK, you certainly know quite well the different work cultures in those countries. So far, are there any unique obstacles or discriminatory practices that Arabs face in international arbitration? particularly within firms? How do you propose countering such practices?
Good question. Thank you, Ibrahim. Well, I think I will help. Well, overcoming these challenges, it's multifaceted approach. And as you mentioned, France and the approach in France in particular, I will draw on a prominent French sociologist, Bourdieu, and his theory of social capital and cultural reproduction. So Arab practitioners in international arbitration, of course, they may encounter distinct barrier and discriminatory practice arising from biases, stereotype, influential, access to influential networks. True. But I think to surmount these hurdles, you need to have, it's crucial to recognize, acknowledge, also appreciate that irrespective of an individual's origin and ethnic background, each practitioner possesses their own unique social capital, socioeconomic background, upbringing, and cultural heritage. So all of which will greatly influence their experiences within the field. So I don't believe that there is a singular situation exclusively applicable to Arabs, like a white or Black situation. And I'm saying that as someone, who personally faced challenges in France and in UK, funding studies, working part-time, building networks. So I sincerely believe that seizing opportunities and persevering is key. While the path for us sometimes may be longer, an obstacle may vary from, one's background. The variability of credibility and access to the arbitration practice is not solely determined by being an Arab, I think. And I would say, in the word of one of my favorite poets, Khalil Gibran, to understand the heart and mind of a person, don't look only at the achievement, but look also at what she or he aspires to do. That's my approach to your question. And I think then to answer the second part, counter practices, I'd say two things. Lilian and Noor touched base on this, collaboration and awareness. So collaboration, building partnerships with organizations, help, sharing best practice, create platforms and professional development opportunities for us. I've recently collaborated with ArabArb by, Turkish University. ArabArb and Mayor Brown are planning to host, an event later in June in London with the aim of, serving the UK and Paris arbitration community with roots, affinity, and interest in the Arab world. And that's amazing. That's great for us. And awareness, of course, it's always key. I think we could always, we need to benefit from the diversity within our community. We have a broad range of dimension. It's not only limited to, where you come from. It's gender, ethnicity, age, religion, nationality, and each of these aspects, they contribute to the richness of our community. And it's bringing a tapestry of perspective, experience, and expertise to the table. We just need to create the atmosphere to embrace and celebrate the differences. And then we can just tap into a wellspring of creativity, innovation, and propel us, our practitioners, toward a better outcome. But, I think it's the major obstacle is probably to be open to unlearning old habits, especially in the arbitration practice, and embrace this change. And to finish, on something interesting and quote Professor Yasbani Fatimi. I don't know if some of you were in the ICC conference this year in Paris, but she did a very interesting keynote speech on diversity. And she mentioned that, in her words, diversity is a proxy for equality. And I think this statement holds immense significance as it highlights the inseparable link between the two concepts. You have equality, foundation for fairness, opportunity for all, whatever the background and circumstances, and then, diversity. And it depends, on multiple factors that I mentioned already. So I think we need to recognize this, embrace this, and I'm convinced that the step we're taking today, just opening discussion, is just dismantling barriers, creating a world where at least equality rather than equity will become more and more a reality for all ArabArb practitioners.
Right. Thank you, Cherine. We understand you all have to pay attention to this if we want to impose our own footprint. Thank you so much. Nawal, we would like to have a better understanding of the arbitration market in practice in Dubai, as UAE is marking itself as the key hub in the Middle East for now. As a lawyer at Freshfields Dubai, What key considerations should clients and international firms, both of them, keep in mind when initiating an arbitration in the UAE?
Well, I think that's also another good question. As I said, there's two ways really to enhance this whole Arab representation or even diversity conversation is by both focusing on the force that is working, the people who are doing the work, and also the procedural environment that we have here, right? So I would like to state or start this question by simply stating that arbitration is looking quite good here in the GCC. At least there's are very substantive developments that we're having really only in the past 5 to 6 years. It was a huge jump. Now, when it comes specifically to Emirat, I would say Emirat is currently the most established arbitration seat that we have in the MENA, specifically when it comes to the DIAC, the Dubai International Arbitration Court as well, very well established. However, we also need to keep in mind that arbitration is quite a very young and modern legal field that we have also in the MENA, and more specifically, again, per your question, in Emirat. So, for example, the first like a stand-alone arbitration law that we had in Emirat was only issued in 2018, which is quite astonishing if you state that to other jurisdictions. Now, that has pros and that has cons as well. The pros of that is that at least you know that the law is up to date and very modern. It was based on the residual model law. It adopted plenty of the New York Convention principles, but it also has cons, meaning that we are still in the process of, the legal practitioner, including the lawyers themselves, the counsels, the arbitrators, and also the courts where we are, requesting our intermeasurements, we're enforcing the awards, are still having that space of learning and developing in this field, right? So that's in general. Now, there are some legal considerations, and I know that we've already exceeded actually the time for this webinar. So I will try my best to shorten it and be very straight to the point. Let me know if I'm exceeding my time. The first first consideration is obviously studying the legal background, right? So this is, what each lawyer should do and conduct for their international client who's heading to a jurisdiction they're maybe not familiar with. So again, starting again, you need to take a look at the federal law that was issued in 2018, right? So very quickly, this law had given us or granted us a more streamlined process to enforce domestic arbitration awards, but most importantly for international client, it also included amendments to the Emirati Civil Procedural Code regarding recognitions and enforcement of foreign arbitral awards, which again, that was a process that we did not have before, but as Cherine Ftouki said very brilliantly, that then how did you do arbitration before? Because there was arbitration. We were relying on the Majelle, right? The Gazette that we had, which is mostly civil procedural mixed with Sharia law to kind of, again, implement and apply arbitration. Now, the second consideration that you need to consider as an international client, are there any mandatory rules regarding arbitration, right? So very, in a very summarized way, there are no mandatory provisions on procedure. The provisions of the arbitration law, however, on the formation of a valid arbitration agreement, grounds in which a party can apply to invalidate or enforce an award are mandatory. So those should be taken into consideration. Now, this might be very evident and, it's a given before you go to any jurisdiction and opt for arbitration there, is you need to ask yourself, is my dispute arbitrable there, right? So just so you don't go in those prolonged procedure and then go to enforce the award and they're like, oh, well, this is inarbitrable here. So very quickly, examples of inarbitrable disputes in Emirat are labor and employment disputes. This might be a very important one for someone coming from a common law jurisdiction where, again, employment and labor disputes are arbitrable. And even now, some civil law jurisdictions, labor and employment are becoming arbitrable. There's also disputes relating to registered commercial agencies. Those are inarbitrable here in Emirat. So that's also quite interesting. And matters relating to public policy. I know this is a very big one where, again, your clients would need to do their own due diligence on awards and judgments that have been issued by the courts of Emirat. However, I will give a very quick example. Family law disputes that aren't merely monetary is considered public policy, a dispute that it will be inarbitrable here. Now, continuing on the legal background consideration or factor, the limitation period statute. And ironically, today we were dealing at the office with appealing a judgment that was issued by the appellate court in Emirat, which is the court that has the authority to enforce foreign arbitral award, because they refused to enforce our clients' foreign arbitral award because we exceeded the limitation period statute. Now, of course, we're arguing vice versa. Or against that. So very generally, the limitation statute for civil claims is 15 years, commercial claims, I think 10 years, if I recall that correctly. And more importantly, when it comes to our practice, to the enforcement of awards, right? So for domestic awards, you have 10 days, which is a very quite short period, and 30 days for foreign arbitral awards, right? So again, that's another very major and key consideration for a client to consider before coming here to Emirat. When it comes to the procedural rules here in Emirat, the arbitration law gave parties the utmost freedom to agree on their applicable procedural steps. So in this regard, you're safe. And of course, you would know that if they're opting for an arbitral institution like the DIAC or the ADGM as well in Abu Dhabi, then they will have to apply the institutional procedure rules under those institutions, which are, I think they're quite excellent. Another consideration that someone needs to take into consideration is discovery. And this is also quite of an interesting one because it's not the same in all jurisdictions, at least not in the States. So when it comes to the civil procedural law that we have here in Emirat, there's no discovery and inspection judicial system at all, which is again quite interesting. Despite this, you do have a safety net that was presented in the arbitration law, because it permitted the tribunals to request courts ordering a party or a third party, for example, giving oral testimony, producing documents as well, and so forth. That's that regarding discovery. I intended to go in a little bit deeper regarding the institutional discovery rules, like the DIAC, but I'm just going to keep it short. Now, another very unique or particular thing that we have here in Dubai or in Emirat is that you need to make sure when you're drafting the arbitral clause is that you're choosing the city Dubai, or are you choosing the institution, right? Because if you're going to a free zone, which is the DIFC or the Abu Dhabi global market, then the DIFC and the ADGM rules apply to procedurally to your disputes. But if you only stipulated in your arbitration clause, for example, Dubai or Emirat, then the by default rule would be, of course, before the tribunal makes the jurisdiction and seat determination, it will be the DIFC rule and not the Emirati arbitration law. So again, that's quite another key consideration for clients to take into mind. There were a lot of other, considerations that I put, to be honest, on my list, but I will go to the important one, which is cost, right? Important to your clients, since your question was regarding clients. So cost, the cost of arbitration in Emirates, regarding the legal fees here, they're not fixed by law. Right? So you don't have legal fees are fixed by law. The practice is hourly raised, and fixed fees arrangements, those are the most commonly used here, which is the situation, I think, in most jurisdictions, at least one that I have familiarity with. Contingency fees are not permitted in Emirat. We don't have any legislations or rules that prohibit third-party funding for arbitration, which is a big thing now. Actually, on the contrary, we have a very advanced third-party funding rules under the DIAC rules. So again, you also, your client might want to touch base on the rights of appeals and challenge. We have a tricky one here, which is that a party have the right to appeal the tribunal's decision regarding their competence, right? So when they issue a decision on that regard, a party here in Emirat can appeal it within 15 days before a domestic courts. And this would be subject to staying the arbitration procedures. Right, so it can be allowed to process until the courts decide on this appeal. So again, this is another kind of key consideration when you're dealing with an international client to brief them on. So I'll be brief. I'll just finish here. I won't add any more. I think that was pretty elaborative. But before I leave it to you, Ibrahim, to kind of wrap it up with our speakers and our audience, I see we also have a couple of questions here in the chat box. I really would like to add on what my other colleagues have said, Cherine and Noor and Lilian, regarding the most juicy questions of racialization and representation, and say that we are really, when it comes to international law firms, the first question that you ask, and I think I told you, my mom is the person, again, I brief everything to, she always asks me, oh, are there Arabs in your law firm? And ironically, I'm in an Arab country, right? But she knows, she's aware that, you know, you would enter those markets, you would enter these institutions, and you will not see many Arabs. However, there are some advances. So I would say that at Freshfields, at least in Dubai, we're actually a majority of Arabs, which is something that I honestly, we don't see in other, again, big, specifically international law firms that are seated in the Middle East. But also, as Cherine stated brilliantly, I would say, is that to know how to market yourself. So I was in a conversation with a senior associate that we have at Freshfields Dubai. And she comes from Egypt, and she's only licensed in Egypt, right? So you must say that, oh, those Arabs are probably educated in very prestigious universities and have another license, England and Wales, right? Or the New York bar, the most common, but she's not. And plenty of them are also not. And I was having this conversation because it was the very first time I'm seeing this in an international law firm. And they're like, we're working hard, right? And we're learning. And so, yes, sometimes it's about the merits and the skills, and it should be, as it should be, really. Of course, those qualifications have value, have weight, but I think it's time for us institutions or anyone who is in a decision-making seat, no matter how small or big your institution, you're always making a difference. So that I would say, especially to Noor and Lilian, who are co-founders of such an institution, you are in a place to actually make a difference and invite those people on table without checking this list of, are you coming from a prestigious university or do you have the New York bar, the England and Wales? Those people can actually shock you. So I'll wrap it up here.
Well, thank you. I am sure we all can agree that our panelists were particularly well spoken today, right? Now, based on all the profiles and interests, I would like to direct a few questions from our audience to the speakers. We'll start first by Mark Nesnans. Thank you, Mark, for a question. How can we combat the issues racializing our expertise and academic background in Arab countries before interviewers? Is there any speaker who would like to take it?
Well, I think we touched base a bit on this already, but maybe a few advice. Consider applying for initiatives offered by institution. Try submitting your CV to arbitral institution to be included in the list and increase your visibility. And also make sure you're surrounded by the right people. Sometimes, you know, serving as tribunal secretaries or spending time at an institution, it enhances your knowledge, your skills, and, you know, helps kind of indirectly combat any potential bias that people may have. But I think there's no like direct solution to how we just, otherwise we won't be here today discussing, but I think we can take steps as the one I just mentioned to kind of reduce the impact such bias may have on us.
Thank you so much, Cherine, for your answer. I hope Mr. understands that you know better about this field now. I would like to, I don't know if she's, yes, Sally Sarsar is still here. So I would like to ask Sally Sarsar a question. I am an arbitrator who speaks Arabic and English. I am also certified in a couple of non-Arab chambers, but have never received an international appointment. How to deal with this? How should I present myself and profile in a better way? Is there anyone, any speaker who would like to take this question? No?
Let me try to take it. It's difficult, it's challenging, and the most challenging part is the first appointment. Once the first appointment happens and there's a little bit more sort of under your belt, it always becomes easier because one sort of leads the other. There's no easy answer, but presumably the best way is building partnerships with who is already there. The appointment is going to be personal. It always is. Subconsciously, we always tend to have biases, have certain predispositions that we go to as counsel, as client, as in-house counsel for certain firms. There's always going to be something in the back of our minds that basically says, if I have a dispute with a particular issue, I know who to think of. That's the right person for it. And so part of the answer is how to increase your visibility in the right places and on the right fora. So part of it is absolutely what was just said, being on the lists. If you're on the list and it's still not happening, building relationships with counsel firms, building relationships with the right people at the counsel firms, people who are going to get that call from the client that says, I have an arbitration and I need an arbitrator. A lot of the times, those are going to be counsel from a particular background, the background that everybody here shares. If it's not with the law firms, a lot of times it's reaching out to connections that you might already have that other people might have. So the sort of second and third link is always helpful at clients, at potential clients. There are particular firms and companies that are sort of in a position where they have more arbitrations than others. Oil and gas is always a big one. Construction is always a big one. Tech is increasingly a big one. And it's about figuring out who is in-house counsel for company X. Do I know anybody in common with them? Do I know anybody else who knows someone in common with them? Or maybe even a third degree. And it's really about building those links just so that you're on people's minds when they have the right appointment.
Thank you very much, Lilian. We hope you'll get there, Sally. I have my last question from Ahmed Qahtain, who asks, any technical tips on how to access big law firms in arbitration, keeping in mind all of my legal experience is based in Qatar only, even though I speak fluent English? Maybe Nawal?
Ibrahim, can you repeat the question once again?
Yes, sure. So the question is from Ahmed Qahtan, who asks, any technical tips on how to access big law firms in arbitration, keeping in mind all of my legal experience is based in Qatar only, even though I speak fluent English?
I think, Cherine, again, kind of touched base on that during her talk. So I'll retouch on this again, because I think this is how I navigated my own appointments, for example, in big firms, HSF, Freshfields, and Anderson as well. Yes, I know, and I'm aware I might have, for example, the international academic background or the bar, but that has, only happened recently. So, I would say it's also part of how you advertise yourself. How do you market yourself, right? So I don't really, when I'm drafting my resume, I always, yes, I put spotlight on my international experience. That's normal because, you're working in a field where internationalization is needed. Arbitration by nature is a cross-border education system, really. This is at the core of it. This is historically how it evolved. And so, speaking more than one language, being licensed in more than one jurisdictions, or even educated in more than one jurisdiction is a plus. So for me, how I write it, and when you understand that, then you're like, oh, I have a kind of a golden card that I can use. And so I'd be like, oh, you know what? I'm educated in a civil law jurisdiction and also common law jurisdiction, right? So instead of being, I've had my LLB from Jerusalem University, which of course it's indicated, but then also just playing with the terminology. I mean, we're lawyers and we kind of maybe understand that. So yeah, civil law, common law jurisdiction. I also have a background in Sharia law jurisdiction because I have 2 years of experience in Emirat, or 3, right? That's a plus. Be like, oh, I speak more than one language, Arabic and English. You will get more appointments just because you speak more than one language. And as Lilian said, actually all of my speakers today and my colleagues here, all of them, I think, speak French. So that's also an addition. If you can also evolve really your language. So I also speak Hebrew on the side, and I committed in the past 2 to 3 years to learn more in order to use it in my profession. So, I mean, I can use it only drafting contracts and that. I'm not still on a level to draft pleadings or sit on an arbitration in that language. But again, that's another way. And yes, and then finally, just also, you might be shocked, people who are up there in the decision-making seats are aware because they had prolonged experience in their hiring. So they are aware when they see someone who actually have the skills and the knowledge to pick them up. And as I told you today, shockingly and ironically, really not planned, I had 3 conversations with 3 different colleagues that I met for the first time, and everyone had a case of being only with 1 license or speaking only 1 language, or so they pick up on you, right? They pick up on you. One of our colleagues are actually considerably younger than all of us. You'd be shocked. I think like a 22 or 23, and he's being offered a junior position, a junior lawyer position. So again, put up your skills there. Know how to market yourself. That's a big advantage. That's a big plus. Hope that helps.
Ahmed, I also would like to add, thank you, Nawal, for insight, that while you see in Qatar, try to contact arbitrators or lawyers, not for a position, but maybe to collaborate with them on publications, on how to organize events, because they would know you more and you can involve more in those sessions, which hopefully and eventually will help you in having and securing an associate position.
Yeah, I would, and I'm gonna drop off in a bit, but just wanted to also endorse what Nawal and Rahim just said. Yes, it's people know, people understand, and they will at some point appoint you. But arbitration is a field where your name matters, so like always always try to publish something. And this is what Lilian was also saying, like try to focus on one expertise and one area that is going to be booming, or just something that interests you, and try to get your name out there. Publication is a big, is very important, but also attending conferences and showing up to panels and all of that, because honestly, at the end of the day, what matters is the informal channels of like, oh, I remember I met this person. Oh, I heard of that person. So it's really not just merit. It's just a lot of exposure. So you have to be very patient and like really be super proactive into getting your name out there. And with this said, I am very, very sorry, but I need to drop off for a call that I'm already late to. But I just couldn't leave the conversation because it was very interesting. So thank you so much for the invite, everyone. And we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Noor. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Our webinar has come to an end. We hope everyone has enjoyed their time with us, because we did. And we also would like to extend you an invitation for our upcoming webinar in a very few days, scheduled on the 11th. So please share it with your friends, with your colleagues on your social media, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good night, or enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you are.
Thanks, everyone. Shukri kbir Nawal and Ibrahim for moderating the panel. And see you soon.
Thank you.